My blood pressure just went right up on the screens, the monitors. My heart rate went up, and immediately there was panic in the room. And of course, lying on the bed and experiencing that, you're thinking, oh, great. And as I was thinking, oh, great, I was sucked out of my body. And I was sucked out of my body into this brilliant blue-white light. And as I went into this blue-white light, I came into this enormous illuminated white room. But this realm felt very watery, very fluid, like it felt like an all-encompassing, peaceful, tranquil, ancient tribe that had welcomed me home. And that's where we go to when we die. We go back to our soul tribe.
I want to welcome everybody back to another episode of The Soul Inspired. Today we have Nicole Meeuws with us. She's had a near-death experience, and we're going to talk about her life and any other experiences we want to dig into. But I really appreciate you being here, Nicole. I've been excited to have this conversation with you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for having me here today. It's lovely to see you.
And as at the beginning, you were commenting about my backdrop with the music stuff, and I look into your background and see all this beautiful art, and just it's interesting when I talk to people how I can get a little bit of a piece of who they are just by looking at their background. That being said,
Yes,
oh wow, there's
lots
another
of
one.
art, lots of
Beautiful.
art around. Yes.
Hmm. That being said, I have had some people in their car tell me their experience. So it really, and I'm not judging people about their background, but it really does kind of bring in some of the piece of who they are. So I appreciate you coming on. I start everybody in the same kind of conversational piece of who you were as a child, actually. I go back to little Nicole, and I try to start at that point because that's when we come into this world. I usually start with, did you have any faith, religion, spiritual beliefs as a child, and maybe kind of start from there. Just a little bit of who you were as a child, the kind of person you were.
Okay, so I grew up in a really warm, loving family, but I don't think my parents were very, very religious. My mother is a Christian, and my father was just a really hardworking, down-to-earth antiquarian book dealer. So I wouldn't say that we had great morals at home, but it wasn't some type of strict religion in our household. Yeah. We were actually really free at home, free to play outside in the nature. And my mum would bake these lovely German apple cakes because she's from Germany. And my father would come home and bring these really interesting and ancient books that we would look into for, like, some of them would be 300-400 years old. So I kind of grew up
Wow.
in a kind of a story fairy tale type of a way.
Yeah, it almost feels like you were growing up on the Harry Potter set or something. Like it's the way you described it. So interesting. So you
I
had,
was very, very fortunate.
yeah, that's beautiful too. So and you also had parents that clearly were painting the picture of giving you the outlet to kind of make your own decisions as you got older of who you were,
Yes.
who you would believe in,
Yeah,
and
I
things
was.
like that.
Yes, yeah. I mean, I went to an international school called the European School in England, and we were brought up in different languages. So my language was Dutch and German because both my parents are Dutch and German, even growing up in England. But just, yeah, we didn't have any strict religious. We had a Christian, upbringing at the school once a week, but it was something that always felt untrue to me
Mhm.
somehow. Something within that story script didn't align with an inner knowing that I think I've always carried inside of me ever since I was a very young child. Because I already, as a very, very young child, I think at 3, already started with very extraordinary supernatural experiences. I had visitations from these two blue beings from the ages of 3 to 5 or 3 to 6. And I called them the two blue boys, and they would come through my window and at night, and they would take me out through my window into the neighbor's house, into their enormous forest garden. And there I would be accompanied by a dragon, strange, a very happy, kind dragon that would make jokes to make me feel calm and at peace. And I would be at this weird, strange structure full of lights. In hindsight, I don't know what that was, the lights,
Hmm.
the different colored lights. I have no idea. But I would do this for many years. Every night I would go there with these two blue beings. So I imagine they took me astrally out of my body. And I remember it was very tiring to leave my body and to come back into my body after that experience. It wasn't like a dream. It was a totally different sensation. It was knowing that I would be lifting out of my body and then going with these two beings. And I think they spoke to me a lot about life and about who I was. I think they gave me a lot of wisdom already at such an early age. It sounds strange, but I think a lot of youngsters have these, let's say, secret friends. And now the Christians would call them demons because, of course, anything they don't understand, they call demonic, unfortunately. Yes, they also exist, demons, but not when they come with love and with kindness and with an open-hearted sense of peaceful way. And that's what these beings brought to me when I would see them at night. So I'd be really excited to go to sleep every night and experience this.
Wow. That's amazing. So you were already experiencing another realm. So, I mean, like you said, it may sound bizarre for anybody who's dug into any type of, um, I'll say it like this, just so it can make sense to a lot of people. But if we're talking about ET or interdimensional beings and these types of these things that are now starting to actually get more attention, if worldwide, that there's this possibility of something else besides human beings. Wow, who would have thought? And and so, you mentioned the blue beings. I remember for years I was obsessed with aliens and ET, whatever you want to call them, and I would study all the different reported types of beings over the years. And I remember these blue beings that I don't know if they're the exact ones, but I can literally recall seeing them in a list of and you can find these online where there's,
Really?
oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. Like as soon as you said it, I was like, oh yeah, I've seen those. Like I haven't personally seen them, but I've seen them reported.
Wow.
So yeah, like it wouldn't surprise me. Also mentioning seeing lights. Um, these we're getting to a point now where I think a lot of times humanity's been stuck on the physical reality of everything. This is why the whole UFO thing is so confusing to so many people. Why do people see lights in the sky and then they disappear? Or, well, maybe they're kind of coming in and out of something, right? And it seems like you were having some kind of experience. We can paint it as spiritual realm and ET realm. Like I'm just saying, I don't want to get too confusing with people here, but it can kind of all come together, right?
Merge
Because
together.
merge together.
Yes.
Because if there's
Yes.
if there's other beings out there that are more in touch with the other realms more than we are in this physicality, then that would make sense. And we can call it spirituality, we can call it another realm, but it to me that's what comes to me right away. I'll let other people decide what they feel that could have been at five. You said at 5 years old. So at 5 years
Yeah,
old, when
from
that was
three
happening,
to five.
I'm
Three
sorry,
to five.
between three to
It
five.
happened from around 3 to 5.
Hmm. And as you got older after that, had you mentioned this at all to anybody?
Look, I completely forgot about it, as you do when you get older. And I
Mhm.
remember I was in a supermarket store called Tesco's. It's anybody from England will understand what shop that is. It's a terrible shop. Anyway, I was in Tesco's going supermarket shopping with my mum in my early 20s. And I think we were walking past an aisle and we saw some kind of, I don't know what we saw. And she said, "Do you remember the Blue Boys?" And instantly when she said that, I said, "The Blue Boys." She said, "You used to talk about them when you were a child. Do you remember that? You used to tell me all the time about them."
Mhm.
And instantly I got that memory coming back. And it's incredible. It takes one small thing to trigger an ancient memory that you've got from a
Mhm.
childhood experience that everything starts coming back. And so, yeah, slowly bits and bobs started coming back. And I thought, that's so weird.
Right.
That's so weird. I'm still thinking about it now, wondering what that funny dragon was, because he really comforted me. I think they were bringing me somewhere to do something. I don't know what. And
Hmm.
that dragon was there to make it funny and, like for children, really, to calm me down for whatever was going on there. I really don't know. And it wasn't in a foresty area, because where I lived, we lived around loads of fields and huge gardens. We all had huge gardens and very rural. So I guess it could have been anything. I don't know.
Well, they look back at children and when they have imaginary friends and they're using their imagination. And I always think it's interesting how those first 5 years of life, let's say, we have such a strong imagination. And then somehow as we get older, I'm not talking about you in particular, but just the vast majority of people, we lose that ability to use our imagination. And the question is, where does that really
Hmm.
come from? Because when we first are brought to this world, we're closer to the other side than we are here. And
Yeah,
so we're using abilities that we start to kind of forget over time. And I'm starting to see imaginary
exactly.
friends is very different than what we've been led to believe.
Exactly. It's not actually imaginary at all. It's just what we call imaginary because we use our left brain, which consists of logic, metrics, and analytics. It's very logical. We're brought up in a society where we end up disconnecting from our intuitive brain, which is the right brain, the artistic, the musical brain, and we switch back into the logical brain, which they force us into. We have to become lawyers and doctors, and we need to have high, powerful jobs with these ridiculous suits on. I mean, this is all left brain way of thinking. So the imagination as a child is it's actually we're born with intact memory, psychism, abilities, and we still carry that as young children with the knowing of who we truly are.
Mm,
And as this program, this corrupted script runs in our earthly realm, our earthly reality, we immediately get programmed by our parents into kindergarten, into school, and then into university, and later on into jobs. And unfortunately, this is all really done to mock us and take away our power, our inert power of knowing who we truly are when we are children.
mm.
And a lot of us keep that inert knowing as well. There's millions of people around the world that still have that psychism and that know about the truth about this realm. But unfortunately, there are also many people that have forgotten that. They've been programmed into the system and sadly have forgotten who they truly are.
My hope is that as we progress and evolve, I've said this in many episodes before that I look at the things that I learned in school. And if we would just flip that into other types of education, right? We would probably live a completely different existence as human beings. It's just we're like you said, we're taught this other way and we go in this other direction, and it just simply would take a complete flip uh to harness actually who we are truly. And I mean, I talk to people on the daily that have had NDEs and had experiences that are unexplainable. Those things aren't talked about in school.
I did something really interesting about, I think it was about 6 months ago on ChatGPT. I put in a world based on the left brain way of thinking
Mhm.
because I was getting this knowledge was coming to me that I needed to do this. And so what ChatGPT created, I said, create an image of a left brain world. What does the architecture look like? What do the people look like? Describe the world. Show me an image of it. And it described exactly the world that we're living in.
Mhm.
And then I immediately knew that we've been programmed into the left brain way of thinking. And so then I asked, please create a right way world brain way of thinking. And it created exactly the world we all want to be in.
Mhm.
The structures, have you ever heard of Terraria?
I have not.
Terraria was an ancient civilization where people had futuristic technology that was only based on healing, from plants to humans to houses to homes to clothing. Um, Putin actually released very recently information that this really existed, that this civilization existed around the world, Tateria. And it's fascinating because it's being suppressed everywhere. Um, and for me, the right brain way of thinking is Tataria. It is art. It's sculptures made out of art. It's colorful buildings. They're shaped in these beautiful shapes. They're not straight and a square like. We were never supposed to live in square buildings. We were supposed to live in geometrically shaped buildings to enhance our consciousness, to enhance our health, to enhance every possible thing you can imagine. So they think they've been very clever, but we carry that knowledge within us, that this is actually the world we want to create, all of us. It's a deep knowing in all of us. And, you know, the ones that find this funny or they find this ridiculous, it's only because they've deeply been programmed and they've forgotten.
What age were you when the actual near-death experience happened?
Well, it happened in 2015 when I was 39. And yeah, I was 4 months pregnant at the time. I wasn't crazy about having a child, I have to be honest. I was always a bit scared of having a child because I knew my freedom would be gone. But then, of course, at the same time, it's a whole new life. There's so many beautiful things that you will receive. It's a huge gift that you can get. Anyway, so at 4 months, there was something not quite right with me, and I was rushed to hospital, and they told me that the baby had died inside of me and that I needed an emergency operation. My husband's a doctor, and he immediately, you know, was there with me, comforting me and reassuring me and said, "Don't worry, it's going to be okay." So I was rushed into the ward, and I lay on the bed thinking, you know, I guess I just need to understand that it wasn't supposed to happen. And as they put in the you know, the drips and everything into my arm, one of the doctors, they started to release the what is it called, the to put you to sleep,
Anesthesia.
anesthesia, right? Suddenly, as soon as they put it into me, I had some type of reaction. My blood pressure just went right up on the screens, the monitors. My heart rate went up, and immediately there was panic in the room. And of course, lying on the bed and experiencing that, you're thinking, oh, you know, great. And as I was thinking, oh, great, I was sucked out of my body. And I was sucked out of my body into this brilliant blue-white light. And there was no stopping me. I was just, you know, I just followed it because I felt suddenly so peaceful and so light. And as I went into this blue-white light, I came into this enormous illuminated white room. I couldn't even see the walls. That's how big it was. It was enormous. And in front of me were these two brilliantly beautiful, the architecture on these beautiful marble thrones threw me away because I never had seen such ancient detailing. I didn't know what civilization it was, but it was ancient. Nothing like Greek or anything Roman. It seemed far more older and far more beautiful. And on these thrones were these feathered-haired, blue-skinned, indigo-eyed, humanoid, fish-tailed beings. And they both were intersex. It was one male-female being and one male-female being sitting on these thrones. And immediately I was brought into such deep peace and such a loving presence that all my fear left me. It's interesting. A lot of people say to me, did you see demons? Demons do not come. They cannot calibrate a very high, loving, peaceful frequency. It's impossible. And so that feeling just went dissipated, and immediately they told me I wasn't supposed to have children in this incarnation, in this life.
Wow.
And I immediately, all the guilt, all the pain, all the suffering left me. And I felt relieved, to be honest. I felt relieved that I didn't have to feel guilty or angry or upset about it. And then they played in front of me a very, very fast moving scene of lots of different things that are happening and will happen. Lots of things happening. And I tried to understand what the scenes were, looking into the scenes, but it was like on a fast forward videotape. It was just moving so fast that I couldn't quite. I tried to capture one scene, then the next one came, so I couldn't capture the first scene, and then the next one came. And they showed me a star system, or at least a frequency system. I call them frequencies. I don't like to call them stars. And there was one like this, a star like this, and then a third one here. So it was shaped like that. I still don't know what star frequency system that is. If anybody knows, please do let me know.
Mm.
But this realm felt very watery, very fluid, like it felt like an all-encompassing, peaceful, tranquil, ancient tribe that welcomed me home. I felt like they were an eternal tribe that have always been here, before and after. And that's where we go to when we die. We go back to our soul tribe, because these beings felt interdimensional. They felt watery consciousness like they were fused with water. And at the same time, they felt deeply tribal. And you know what's really interesting? When Avatar came out,
Mm.
I immediately realized that what they're showing us in movies, they're showing us who we really are, not the other way around.
Right.
We're actually avatars right now, going back into who we really are, into these incredibly peaceful nature type of interdimensional beings that are creating worlds of joy and love and color and bliss. I think that's what happens. We become absolute creators and manifestors. We are part of God, but we are not God. We are connected as fractals to the greater universal consciousness I personally call universal love, the all-knowing, the I am, yeah, the Christ. And that comes, you know, that comes through all of us when we live in this earthly realm. I think that Christ came here not to worship him, but to become like him.
Mm-hmm.
To become loving, to become gentle and caring, to become healers in this world, in this realm. Yeah, to help one another, to love one another. This is what we are, and we just need to remember. We are not here to worship idols. We are here to become as Christ was, love. And I know a lot of Christians will really despise me for saying this, and I'm really sorry if I have offended any Christians. I absolutely must say I adore Christians. I think they have wonderful morals, and I think that's incredibly important in our chaotic society now. We need morals more than anything. And I will go to church and I will stand with the Christians, because I know the root of it is to become that very vessel of love in this world.
Yes. I've been saying it for a long time because a lot of these videos come out. First of all, thank you so much for sharing that so far. I've got lots of questions, of course, but I was gonna say I have a lot of times where I'll put an NDE video out and you'll get kind of this back and forth between comments of more the Christian based comments and then the more spiritual comments and then almost kind of like an argumentative type behavior sometimes, and not everybody. But what I would say is just from my own life, I didn't have a religion growing up. In my 20s, I became Catholic with my sister for our own personal um, decisions at the time. And what I loved about church, what I liked about it, so I fell in love with the fundamentals of what it was representing, the fundamentals
Yes.
of community, the fundamentals
Yeah.
of belief in a higher something that we were. I didn't have
Yes.
that growing up, so I wanted to put my roots into something like that, and that's why I went
Yeah.
that way. And so that's why I have zero judgment on religions. What I do have judgment on is harming ourselves and others through religious dogmatic beliefs and principles, and that kind of stuff I don't like. And that, but that's a man-made, that's we did that we've done that, right? Just like all the chaos we've created, we kind of went that route. I don't believe that these religions and belief systems were set up in play originally. This is just my own belief. I don't think they were completely put together for power. I think they became power. I think there became these parts to it. And again, that's just my own feelings. I'm not saying anybody's wrong in their feelings, but so I agree with a lot of what you're saying, and I think that it's almost better to have at least um, those principles or those morals than to not have them at all. But I think we have to continue to grow the way we are, and this is why stories like yourself that are coming out are showing us a bigger piece of who we are. I also agree with what you said about movies and how, our movies come out from our imagination. And what is our imagination? I'm using that word a lot today, but because I'm not, it sounds minuscule, but it's not. The imagination, I think, is truly what we are, because in the other side, imagination is everything, right? You think something, it's there. We learn here that it's kind of a joke. It's not real. It's not, you know, this is where manifestation comes from. This is where the power of suggestion comes from. All these things. It's all part of our imagination, but we're taught young that it's not real and it doesn't exist and it doesn't help us. And then it's harder when you're older, and I still struggle with this, to realize that the thoughts we have create the life we have in many ways. And then you go, okay, I gotta change my mindset. Okay, I've got to get back to that. Well, then unfortunately, all these things we've been taught push us back down. So it's a real struggle for a lot of people. And this is why I think it's important. These shows are important for people to understand this stuff. You were in another place with two, you said feathered beings.
Yeah, feathered haired,
I
blue
know.
skin, indigo eyed, humanoid, fish-tailed beings.
Hmm.
And the more they were telling me, the more I was backing away and sucked back into the blue vortex thing, which is such a shame because I was about to say, oh, thank God I'm here.
Right.
And there I was back on the hospital bed again with this awful Austrian nurse who I grabbed her hand and immediately I started telling her where I was. She threw my hand away because, she didn't like the fact that I was holding her hand. I don't know. She wasn't really, maybe she wasn't cut out to be a nurse after all.
Mm,
But luckily, my husband was next to me. And what happened then? I hadn't realized that I was talking to her in a completely different language. And I switched to my husband and started speaking to him in that language. And he's a doctor, as I mentioned before. And I was speaking to him for at least 10 minutes long in this incredibly ancient sounding kaha, and then very high frequency and low frequency. All my husband said, it reminded him almost a fusion of Native American with dolphin and whale frequencies. It was like a fusion of both of that together.
wow.
That's what it sounded like. It wasn't exactly Native American Indian, but it had a kah, this kind of really strange way of speaking, beautiful way of speaking, actually. And yeah, and slowly, after about 10 minutes, I started to kind of regain where I was, but I remembered everything. I remembered what had happened. He told me later on afterwards what had happened, so it all made sense. Um, but it was an incredible experience. Of course, my life changed drastically after that because I managed to get some psychic gifts that I brought back with me.
Hmm.
I was able, first of all, to listen to water. I know that sounds really bizarre, but I was able to go into the ocean and have the water speak to me as if it was an old friend, a storyteller. And I would ask it stories. I would say, tell me about this world. Tell me about the stories. And I started getting the most incredible uploads or downloads, whatever you want to call them. And every night I would come out of the ocean and go back home because I lived near the ocean back then. And I would write these stories down, all of them. And that ended up becoming a book that I wrote called Terra Infinita, Downloads from the Ether. I thought that was a brilliant title, with the stories I was told from the water. I'd never experienced that before, being able to listen to the water, because I just thought water is water, you know. We go in there, we use it, we drink it, we swim in it, we wash in it. But actually water is so much more. Water is everything we never realized. Everything they taught us about water is not true.
Hmm.
So we need to start asking what truly is water, and where does it come from? Why does the endless mountain here where I live constantly bring water down the mountain? It's not raining here. Where is it coming from? Where is the real source coming from? Could there possibly be an inner earth place where the real water is coming, constantly giving us water? I don't know, but it's constantly coming.
Hmm.
We have springs all over the world where water is constantly flowing. Where is it coming from? Nobody seems to ask those questions. It is such a powerful, potent substance. And we need to start to program water with our thoughts to heal this earthly realm. We can do that by just speaking to water and asking to bestow the water peace, to harmony, restore it back into harmony in this realm. If we all would do that, the water retracts memory. They've done experiments now in the last 15 years, how water under a microscope, I don't know if you've heard about him, Omoto, I think is called, a Japanese scientist, put water under a microscope. He had let water on his windowsill, one with the words love on it and one with the words hate on it, and then put it under a microscope. And under the microscope of the water crystals under hate were completely distorted and broken. And under the water with love, joy, and gratitude, the crystals had grown and were the most beautiful geometrical shapes.
Wow.
So what does that tell you about water? Water can transform when you give it sound, when you give it feeling, when you give it emotion. And that's why when we drink water, we can purify it. When we go to the ocean, we can purify that with our thoughts, with our heart centers. We all need to be doing that right now. We have much more power than we've ever been told. And if we all know it, not believe it, know it, then we can transform this realm finally into heaven on earth. That's what we're all here for.
Mm-hmm. Wow, it's and what's fascinating, I've been told many times, I have this, speaking of water, I have to have quite a few showers all the time. And
Yeah.
I'm not sure why. I've always been this way. It probably helped me as a kid growing up because I didn't really go through that stinky boy teenage phase because I was always like clean all the time. But it
Yes.
carried on in my adulthood where it's not unlikely for me to have a shower in the morning and the evening. And I think it's such a cleanser for me. It's like I'm almost like I need it in order to shed off whatever
Rejuvenate.
is
Yes.
going on energetically within me. And so,
Yes.
and the funny thing is,
Yes.
I'm like we mentioned right before the show, I'm an April sign. I'm a Taurus. I'm not a water sign, but yet it somehow cleanses a part of me. And so it doesn't surprise me everything you're saying about water. I've never spoke to anybody about water on the show, so this is really a fascinating area. Um, you mentioned, if we can really harness what this is bringing us, it can create this heaven on earth, this place we're going to. Why do you think we are in such a dark time now? What brought us to this moment? I'm just curious your feelings around that.
Well, what brought us to this moment is because we choose to follow the script, the corrupt script that is playing out in front of movies, in music videos, in your crappy Netflix that you're actually paying for monthly. You're following that script in the news. You're following the script of religious doctrines. You're following the script that you are not powerful. And if you continue to follow that script, the false matrix reality, you will create a dystopian future. And unfortunately, the elites aren't bad because they are what they are. They're on the same, they're still in this realm just like us.
Right.
But they're also, unfortunately for them, it's all about power and to be the most powerful in this realm. If they only understood that we cannot exist without them, and they cannot exist without us. And if they would just understand that to create this incredible reality, heaven on earth, they would have to become love and have to let go of control and power. And then this world would truly be heaven on earth, you know. So,
Yeah, I do think that's why we're seeing a lot more, I'll use the word ugliness coming through from those higher power, those powerful positions. We're seeing a lot more than we used to see. And I believe a lot of people
yes,
are confused as to how these things, how did that even happen? Like what underneath our nose? Like these terrible things were happening in the celebrity world type thing. And you go, what was going on? You know, but I guess that's power and ego driven. I guess that's, we have to see, I always say we have to see the dark in order to know the light. Like we have to know what dark looks like to understand the light. And I think this is where we're in this transitional period.
yes, absolutely. We're in cycles. We're going through the end of a cycle now. The Mayans spoke about it. It's an ancient cycle that's, be going on for thousands of years. And what we're going into now is the cycle of chaos, where everything will be seen. Everything has always been hidden away from us. Don't think for one moment that these things haven't happened. They've happened for thousands of years. It's just that we are now finally awakening and seeing the truth of what's always been happening here. And these cycles are affecting everything. They're affecting, what we're going to experience in our earthly life. I mean, I've had prophetic dreams all my life about seeing two suns in the sky. And now I saw in TikTok or some other videos that these things are appearing now.
Mhm.
And we mustn't fear them, because fear is actually presenting the dystopian timeline. So these things are wonderful, they're natural, they've always happened, and they're happening again in our lifetimes. These cycles are coming in now during our lifetime. We've come in for this. We've
Right.
come in to experience the end of a cycle. Isn't it wonderful? All we need to do is step back into nature and understand the science, listen to the nature, listen to the science, listen to our intuition. This whole AI computer, even though we're using it now, which is great, but we're using it for a good thing. We're
Mhm.
using it to spread this message. If we disconnect from this more and more and go out into nature, go and connect with the water, go out you know, into natural surrounding areas, away from cities, we will become healthy again. We were never meant to live in cities, none of us, especially not in these square-shaped buildings, because they make us ill with all this Wi-Fi around us. No wonder we're going crazy and have depression and just falling out of the truth of who we've always been. And that's why I can only say, go into nature, disconnect. If you've got depression, if you're feeling suicidal, go back into nature and connect to who you truly are. You're the essence of love, and it will heal you. Nature isn't just a bunch of trees and some flies around. Nature is a living organism that speaks to you. It's like the ethereal dimensions. You can speak to nature. People have seen visions in nature. A lot of people that take DMT, for instance, they go to the Amazon and smoke that. And suddenly, nature becomes alive and they see entities. These things are always there. It's just basically taking the veil away and making you see what it really is. And that's why I say when you go out to nature, you take your shoes off, because you need to ground yourself so the electromagnetic energy of the earth goes through you.
Mhm.
Shoes are not a good thing to wear. Regarding shoes, actually, they found a pair of shoes which was a couple of thousand years old with magnets underneath that they found somewhere in the snow. And people already had back then this ancient knowledge that we need the energy of the earth to run through our feet to connect us back into the whole.
Wow.
This energy is healing us. When we're ill, the best thing, when we've got chronic diseases, the best thing is to go barefoot and walk barefoot. It's been shown on scans to heal the body. The
That's amazing.
inflammation is a lot less when you walk without shoes on the earth. So don't underestimate what nature is. It's not a bunch of flies or some grass or trees. It's much more than that.
Absolutely. And I was just saying this the other day. I was driving and I was seeing all these teenagers and young adults all on their phones and head down, phone down, and and I look at this and again, having kids myself, a few older kids, and then I've got my young ones coming here. I've noticed as hard as it has been to see them go through this cycling like not real. It's that same idea that I've said. Sometimes, unfortunately, I don't know if it's the human experience that we sometimes have to experience the depths of what we don't want to feel to understand what can be. Meaning, if we're stuck on this electronic, on this phone, and we're feeling depression, we're feeling sad, and then we go out into nature one time with a friend and we go, wow, why do I feel this much better? That's how we start to learn. Unfortunately, we're a species that learns through mistakes. Unfortunately, this is what I just believe. You look at a toddler, it falls, bumps its head. Oh, next time maybe I won't take that same. And I think we're in a massive learning point where, yes, it looks bad that everyone's stuck, but I think if you really dig into it, the further down that darkness, that sadness, that feeling you don't like goes, you're searching for what will bring you up. And that's my
Yeah.
hope. I'm an optimist. I have more of a, I've always been this way. I'm like, okay,
Well, that's the truth. I wouldn't
yeah,
even call it being an optimist. I change all these words because they're programs anyway, calling yourself an optimist.
mm,
This is the truth. This is who you were supposed to be.
yeah. Because I always see it that way. I see it like, I don't see it like, oh, that's so sad. We're all doomed forever. It's more, okay, we're learning. And this is going to turn us this way because we're feeling this. And
Yes.
it's not good. I mean, I'm not going to sit and promote it that we're going through it. Let's try to heal now. But it's kind of it seems to be part of some bigger process that's at work right now.
Yes.
And so
Yeah.
that's the way I see it. I feel it myself, even running businesses. If I'm on my phone, I'm like, oh my gosh, enough. I got to turn it down. I got to go sit outside or do something, play some guitar, sing, whatever it is that brings me back to my alignment, right? And it gets me
You
back into
see?
this different
You
place.
see, but you're old enough to do that. Think of somebody who's 8 or 10. The
Mhm.
mind programming is so strong. So it really is up to the parents to have really strong boundaries when it comes to things like that. If you have parents that don't care, then unfortunately you're going to end up really programmed and full of all kinds of issues. So it's
Mhm.
really up to the parents, make sure your kids have a little bit of time, but bring them out in nature much more time. That's what I would say.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I even see it in my 3-year-old. If she's running over to see what I'm doing on my phone, I'm like, nope, nothing's going on. Just put it down. We're not
Nothing's
doing
happening
that.
here.
No, because I've seen awful TikToks and videos out there of life's so busy, put a screen in front of them and it's terrible. It's terrible,
It is
and
terrible.
it
And
and
not
it
just that, it's the Wi-Fi and everything else.
mhm.
So yeah,
Yeah.
but going back to the supernatural experiences, after having this NDE, I became much more psychic and I started to be able to read people's auras. I started to be able to see colors coming from different people, which was really interesting, and symbols, all kinds of weird symbols. And I started painting these paintings called soul frequency paintings. I tune into your soul and I see all kinds of color shapes and I paint that down. And in the end, that's something that I love doing because it's not just healing me, it's healing them. And with these paintings, I also tell the people what they mean, the symbols in there about their lives. And it's incredible the feedback that I've got said, wow, that I was super accurate about things that I mentioned about them and how can this be done in a painting? And they didn't understand. But it was
Mm.
it was interesting because this is for a person in the States. And it becomes obsessive, repetitive colors. It almost looks like the inside of a brain, because it's
Mm.
so, there's, all kinds of things happening and flowing in cells, and that's what comes out when I do these things connected to people's soul aura, soul paintings.
Wow.
But yeah, that's something that I love doing, and that's another thing that happened after the NDE, being able to know these things about strangers, which is amazing.
It's amazing, and I can attest to. I've said this on previous shows. When I was a kid, before I got, I'd listen to what certain kids would say. I would close my eyes every night, and I would think of a person I know, and I would see colors coming out of them, and then I would tell my mother the colors I would see coming out of them. And because my mom wasn't in a religion, she was more spiritually driven in ways, and she would just, I think if she were to say anything, maybe Buddhist is the closest she would feel attached to, but she would ask me about these, and this went on for years, and I thought it was normal. I thought it was as normal as brushing your teeth before bed. And then I'd start bringing it up to my friends, and that's when it kind of went the other direction because I realized that not everybody was doing that, and I didn't want to do something that everybody wasn't doing, and so that's what
What
can
a
happen.
shame.
Yeah.
But I mean, that just tells me about you, that you always had the gift. You always had the gift.
Yeah, and I noticed that looking at people in stores, I could feel their energy. I could feel, and I still have that now, and it's coming more online because I coach and I'm around people, and I don't see the auras the same. Maybe I've just turned off that. I didn't actually see it in physical. I would have to kind of like get into a space before I was falling asleep. So mine was just in a bit of a distant background, but I truly believe that we have these energies and auras that come out of us because I've witnessed it in a different way. And it's beautiful that you put into paint and you put that into an art form, because
Yes.
that's part of that right brain that's coming in and working with everything. Is that also the same way you like you said you wrote the book? Did you was the writing coming from a place like that too, like from a more
The
natural place?
writing, the writing really came from whenever I was in water, whether it was a bath or the ocean. As soon as I was in water, I'd start getting these stories being downloaded. Talk like
Wow.
somebody is reciting a story to me,
Hmm.
and I would see it very visually. And so that's how I would remember it visually. And so I'd write all these stories down in the book that I sell.
See, and there's
Yeah, it
some
was
people
really,
out there that could probably listen to you saying that and think that's absolutely crazy and absurd. But I will tell you, as a songwriter, as a musician since so young, I was writing music and I had no idea where this was coming from. I would just start playing
oh
chords
wow.
and I would just start singing the words. And I'd look back and go, what is this about? Like, yes, this could be deep rooted in something I'm feeling, but it was so mature for my age. At 11 years old, I was writing very mature stuff. And so as I become older, understanding how I write, my best writings are the ones that make me really feel, are the ones I just start playing chords and just start saying whatever comes out. I record it, and 90 to 95% of what I say stays. I might maneuver a few words around because I knew what I was trying to say, but didn't quite get it out fast enough because it's coming so quick. But I know that that's from a different place, whatever that place is. So it's in the same sense, it's the same kind of thing.
It's coming
It's like a
from home.
channeling. Yeah,
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 it's coming from home. Just remember it as home. It's coming from home.
yeah.
That's where the beauty is. That's where the endless musical notes and songs are playing right now.
Mm.
You're just like a frequency radio station because you are an electromagnetic frequency. You're just tuning in at 2 a.m. randomly to the song and it's coming through you
Right,
and you're
exactly.
writing the song.
Yeah.
That's how it goes. It really does. And one of my stories actually came true. I wrote it back in 2021. And then a few years later, I started hearing, actually, it was this year, I started hearing on TikTok or somewhere of these strange. So basically, I wrote a story about these strange plasma type geometric shapes that will come into our realm. And what they're here to do is to change the frequency, to change the timelines. Okay. They're
Uh-huh.
here to help us. And it's not they, it's us, because we're all connected. Okay. And so I wrote this story down. And this guy on TikTok, I think he works for he's some astrophysicist, whatever. And he's filming these plasma shapes
Yeah.
that people are seeing around the world that are coming in now in these strange geometrical
Wow.
shapes. And I was blown away. I said, this is it. This is exactly what's happening, you
Yes.
know?
So you're
And
touching on something. I just need to mention something before I lose it because I
yes,
mentioned this in a previous show that there was that time where there was this New Jersey drone thing that was going on, and there was all these drones people were seeing. And I don't know if you're familiar with it or not, but there was a lot of weird things going on in the last year, and people were looking to the skies to see these drones. And I think that there was a part of it that was had something to do with it's an actual thing. It's not, from another realm. It's an actual human-made object. But what it was doing is it was making people look to the skies. And people on TikTok were filming these things, and then just beside it, there's this light. What is that light? And they'd zoom in, and it would start doing all these kind of like orb type things. And I'm watching these every night before sleep. I was like, wow, all these people are seeing these shapes in the sky that were lighting up and making all these different kind of formations and geometric shapes and stuff. And so I started telling everyone I knew about this. I'm like, "Oh, have you seen all over what's going on?" And they're like, I don't know what you're talking about." I'm like, so I'm bringing up videos showing them like, "Oh, I've never seen anything like it." And it's weird, like our awareness, like it's like my awareness, I was aware of this going on and it's still happening. And it's absolutely exactly what you just said. And so you're saying
yeah,
you wrote about this or had this
yes,
come through to you years
it's in
back.
my book.
But as
Yes,
soon as you just started
yes,
talking about it, I'm like, yeah, I mentioned it to a few guests I've had on, and they were like, oh, that's fascinating. But yeah, you can easily look this stuff up. This isn't something from me. You can go to
yes,
TikTok, YouTube, you can look up orbs in the sky, and you'll sit there for hours. And yet,
yes.
it's not in mainstream news, though, right? It's just
No, it's
it's
not.
just a random light in the sky. It's just, like
Yes.
don't worry about that. So yeah, you're picking up on something.
Yeah, so the stories that I write, they're happening right now, and I write all the way up to 2050. So we're going to go through a massive transition through the next years, especially now, 27, 30, 32, upwards to 2050. But we needn't to be scared because we've come here. This is part of our, this is part of why we're here. And, whatever plays out, I hope that window's not annoying. It's like constantly opening with the wind. But whatever plays out, it's not going to be easy for all of us, okay? We might go through times that are going to be really tough, but that's just going to break our hearts open even more. And we're going to learn to not be so service to self. We're going to finally understand how to be service to others and care for others and live through many different moments in time, you know.
Yeah.
Life is that way. It's not always easy. But we have to really understand that we need to start to realize that we need to step out of the darkness, out of our egoic, superficial ways. The making a lot of money and vanity and the false celebrity idols, all of that is part of our awakening to realize what they really are. I get goosebumps because when you realize that, you let go of that. You're not interested anymore. You go out in nature, start to create music, you start to write, you bring your kids out to the nature, you let them swim in the ocean, you play with your pets. All of that no longer is important because it's only there to serve themselves. It's not here to bring us harmony or peace.
Yeah.
It's here to do the opposite, isn't it? That.
It is. And the interesting thing is once people get to that place, right? Once they get to all the money they need, once they get to the ego-driven parts of them that they were fighting for, they realize at that point, once they get there, just how empty they feel.
Yeah.
And
And
this
and
is,
that's
and it's so unfortunate to watch, but you see it time and time again.
yeah.
And it's supposed to be, we can use that as a learning tool to say, wow, look what's going on. You'd think they'd have everything they need, and yet they're so empty. No, I'm not saying this about everybody, but there's just so many examples of it that I think you get to this place that you're always going after, and then you go, okay, I've got here now, and now I don't know where to go. Well, there's a reason you feel that way because you were going the wrong way. You're going after something that's not real. It's just it's an ego moment and it passes very quickly. Um, so I totally feel everything you're saying. It so many have said they've seen some things coming that are going to be difficult to go through, but at the same time, it's kind of like it's like growing pains, and we have to go
Yeah.
through them in order to get
Yeah.
to that other
Just see
place.
it, just see it as breaking your heart open even wider. We need to have that in order to implement the heart-centered consciousness now, the Christ way of being. That's what we're here to do, to
Hmm.
create heaven on earth. And we were always supposed to do this. And I think we've failed many times. And we
Hmm.
have a time now that we can do this. It's really up to each and every one of us. And I wanted to say something about people that are super wealthy. There may be people watching this as well that are super wealthy. What happens is you forget how to do things with your hands. You forget how to even dress yourself because you have some stylist or some person dressing you. You have a cook, a chef. You forget how to do anything for yourself anymore. And in fact, what happens to you is all your power leaves you and it all gets put onto some other people to do everything else for you. So you no longer know you don't even know who you are. You don't even know what you want to do. You lose that. And no wonder they're depressed because they lack this awareness of gratitude, of being actually grateful to be here in the now and to create things. Many of these super, super wealthy people, they don't know how to create anything.
Mm. I
Not at
know.
all.
Yeah, it's very so we talk about left and right brain. It's like left brain is 100% on, right brain's not. And when you were over there, just really quickly, when you were on the other side and you were with these beings, did it feel like a dream or did it feel real like we are right now? Or did it like what kind of like t feeling did it
Right.
have?
Right. For me, this reality is the dream world. This feels more like a dream
Okay.
compared to that reality. So
Mhm.
this is the dream, if you want to ask me.
So I'm part of
And
the
that,
dream.
yes, this is a dream. I
Right.
have created you. We
Okay.
obviously need to share information in this dream. You've chosen to become a musician and a dad. That's a wonderful thing. I've chosen to become an artist and have pets all around me
Right.
and live in wild nature. This is my dream. It's full of colors and happiness and joy. It's not like that for everyone, unfortunately. And people will ask me, why do some people get born in war-torn countries or grow up with severe sexual or emotional abuse? I can only say that at a very, very, very deep consciousness level, that the soul either decided to come in to experience that, what it felt like, as horrific as it sounds, or that it was the perpetrator in the other life to having to go through that again.
Okay.
So maybe that child who ended up in the war was the soldier who killed the child. Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is how karma gets recycled and how we understand how we grow. And that's why some children that come to this earth are naturally full of wisdom and they naturally know things. And we can't explain how do these children know that? It's because they still have intact memory.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the big things I always promote is awareness. I always say to everybody, if we can just find our own internal awareness, it would help so much in our life because doesn't even have to be someone who's in a war country. It could be just some things you're going through in your life that are really hard to deal with. And the
Yeah.
moment that you can become more aware and you can step back and say, okay, what's going on around me? Why am I dealing with this? What's happening? And you start asking those questions. And what you just said is not in a way to say, well, you deserve this because you did it in a past life and now you're getting what you did and blah 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 blah. But there may have been you're right, there may have been something that was kind of designed to experience this now. But if your awareness says, okay, I see why I'm going through this and how can I heal from it? And how can I work through
Exactly.
this then? Because I don't want to
Exactly.
continue to do this.
No.
But again, that starts with awareness. Because if you're just in the cycle of the movie and you're just, life is terrible, and it just keeps happening, you don't have time to actually say, why is this
Stop and
happening?
feel.
And I
Yeah.
know it sounds bizarre. And I've gone enough through some things too. And you have to find that place to come back and say, what's going on? And it's so hard. It's difficult. And I get it for anybody. I feel for anybody going through things. And so,
Absolutely.
but I think that what you said, it's not completely absurd. I think that it makes sense. Um, but it's interesting you said this is the dream, that was the reality, and here we are experiencing this dream. In this life dream, here you are using your right brain, creating art for people, writing, the book you've wrote, maybe future books, I'm not sure, but where do you
Yes.
where do people connect with you or find you? Like, do you have a website or anything that people can find this information from?
Yeah, sure. They can connect to me on nicolemeeuws.com. And on there, they can reach out and email me and even come to me with issues and problems. I also help people who have any kind of issues with as much love as I can. I'm always there for people who need some guidance and just to kind of ignite them and make them realize that they've got everything inside of themselves already. I'm not a guru here. They are inert, wise beings. They just need to be switched on. That's
Hmm.
all.
Well, I love that. Well, I would encourage people to check out your site, and they can probably can they see more of your art there and everything that's
Yes, they can see my art there, my paintings. I'm just working on a beautiful organic piece here.
wow.
I love painting out in nature. I don't like to be confined in a dark room. I need to be under trees or by lakes or by the ocean because that's where I like to create. And I use my hands and just organic things. That's how I
Mhm.
like to paint.
Well, I love that. The last question I always ask everybody that comes on the show, and it can be as organic as you want it to be that come to you, but it's from a place of who we are. Here we are right now, you and I. Why do we choose if the other side has all these realms and there's beauty and love and there's probably some other sides that, we didn't talk about today. I'm not sure if there's I don't know what the darker realms are, or if that is us internally. That's a whole other program. But if there's this other space that is beautiful, like you've experienced, why would we come here and incarnate in this 3D body?
To feel. To feel love, to feel joy, to feel pain, to feel sadness, to feel guilt, to feel jealousy, to feel shame, to feel sadness, to feel all the emotions that are possibly there. And the interesting thing is, whenever I'm doing interviews, I can always see orbs. I think the viewers will also see them. I've seen two orbs so far flow through you.
Oh, really?
You'll see it on the video later on. One just went like this. And it's so interesting. It's never happened to me before, but I'm seeing them and the viewers will see it. You'll see it when you edit the video. Really interesting. But those orbs, they're also there to show us that we're living in many different realms, and this is just a physicality where we're here to experience. We're here to live, to see the beauty, to eat wonderful food or not, to taste, to smell. We're here to experience it all
Hmm.
and then decide what we're going to do with it.
I love that, and you really made it from just a place to feel, right? It's some people say it's to experience, to love. Um, I always get different answers to that, and that's why I love that question because I always feel like I've got all the questions answered, and then someone says something else. I'm like, oh, no, this feels very different. So it's my big part that I write down as I'm writing all these notes and everything. But I've really appreciated you coming on today and sharing your experience, sharing your wisdom. And I always turn to the audience and I say, please, please, please continue to like, share, and subscribe to the Soul Inspired. Check out Nicole's site. If this episode speaks to you or you think it could help somebody, the best thing you can do is share it and show them, because that's how we get these messages out there. So I really appreciate you, Nicole, coming on, though. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Lots of love.
So